Previously, we've talked about creating classes by using attributes and creating methods in order to access those attributes and do other things. Well, now we have our final thing we need to create our class, and that is we are going to go in and add constructors. Now, some people will teach doing constructors first, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I want to do it last because it combines everything else that we've done. We're going to take those properties that we created and we're going to give them default values. We're going to create the constructor, which is a special type of method. And then we're going to see how to overload that method. So let's take a look at how we're going to do that. I'm already here at the top of my class that I've created before. And typically what I will do is put my constructors up towards the top, but underneath any of my attributes. So I've got a section here. I need to specify my accessor. Most of the time it's going to be public. Very rarely is there ever a need for there to be a private. There are certain circumstances, don't get me wrong, but most of the time it's just going to be public. I am not going to have a return type. That's because the constructor returns an object of this type. Then I'm going to have my constructor, which is simply going to be the name of my class. Planet in this case. If I put an open and closing parentheses like such, this is known as a default constructor. That's because it takes no parameters. It's the one that's being used by default. So what I'm going to do is inside my constructor, I'm going to set the default values for my attributes. This dot location equals 3. This dot message as such. And now we're done. Nothing special that we have to do. Now, that's just the default constructor. What if I want to give it some default values? Well, let's take an example where we're going to pass in the message but not give the location. So I'll once again say public, planet, but inside my parameter list, what I'm going to do is say string message. Remember, in order to overload a method, I have to have a different number or type of parameters. So I couldn't have two that didn't have any parameters. That's why I had to put that string message there. Now, I could say this.location equals 3, but what if I change that? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say this, open and close parenthesis. That calls my default constructor, gives me all of those default values. Then I only need to set what I want to change. This.message equals message. Remember, when I say this dot and then a value, what I'm doing is I'm specifying the class level attribute. If I have a variable with the same name, but I don't say this, and it's available as a parameter, then I'm using that local variable. We're going to do one more overload. Public, planet, planet number, string message, like that. Then I can say this dot location equals planet number, this dot message equals message. You might go, well, why did I use the planet number instead of saying location twice? Just to show the fact that my parameter does not have to equal my class attribute. Now, there is one thing that I did not do, which is I did not call my default constructor. And this is a typical thing that I see a lot of people do. And they go, oh, I don't need to because I set all of my class attributes. Well, I would like to beg to differ real quick. And this is just a quick little tip, something to see and something you want to think about. I'm going to come up here and call my default constructor, even though I'm going to change both of those values. And the reason is later on, I might update this class. And in updating the class, I might change the number of attributes. And therefore, I might have a new attribute that I'm not setting here. And I might create a constructor later on that has all three of those attributes, or 4 or 5. So I always want to make sure I set a default constructor and call that. That way I set all my attributes for any possible future calls. It's just a quick line of code. It takes very little time to run, but it helps reduce potential bugs in my code that I have to debug later on. So that is how we set up our constructors, how we set up some overloaded examples. Could I do more? You bet. But this is a good, simple example for us to start working with. If you found this video helpful, please give it a like and consider checking out our other videos on learning how to program in Java.